Hi everyone, welcome to Active Self-Protection Extra here on John's Briefs. Today it's C2 with the Baron of Barristers, Tim Forshee, criminal defense attorney extraordinaire.
Never fails to crack me up.
And recently had a video on a major channel that talks about legal stuff all the time with attorneys who were talking about what can I do in defending my vehicle. And they listed a number of states that allow the use of deadly force, at least in some instances, to protect property. And they listed Arizona. Let's talk to the attorney about it.
To win the fight after the fight, you need help. After a use of force, I trust Firearms Legal Protection to help me win the fight for the rest of my life. From their 24/7 attorney-answered hotline to coverage for the use of all legal tools, Firearms Legal Protection has you covered. Get a discount by signing up at the link below.
So I'm talking, if you're paying attention to this, I'm talking about the armed attorneys, Richard Hayes and Emily Taylor, and I like them. I'm not trying to start no beef with them. I've actually, before this began, before we recorded this, I texted them, okay? And I said, hey guys, I think you've goofed this part up, right? And it was a good video.
Yep.
I think overall it was a good video. I think overall it had a lot to say. I loved a lot of things that they said about that. I loved that they said, don't use deadly force to purely protect property because you might beat the charges, but you ain't going to beat the ride.
Yep.
And it's going to cost you too much. Don't do that. So I liked a lot of that. But then they said there are a number of states that allow the use of deadly force in protection of property in some limited cases.
I think we want to talk now about the states that have some use of deadly force in defense of property alone. There's only a handful of these. I was actually really surprised. And again, caveats. Know your state's law. If you live in one of these states, make sure you understand it. And I actually have we're very familiar with Texas's law, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and why these might not be as much protection as you think. But we have Arizona, Florida, Illinois, surprisingly, Mississippi, Oregon, and Texas.
Surprised about Oregon too.
Yeah, so these are states where there is a situation contemplated in the law where a use of deadly force in a pure defense of property could exist.
I was like, oh boy, no, that's a mistake.
Right.
Because Arizona is not one of those states. So I texted, and Richard texted me back and said, no, I disagree for this reason. And I love you, Richard, but you're wrong.
Yeah.
Let's talk to the attorney. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I've never met Richard. I've been a fan of the show. I don't know why you would tune into that show when you watch this show and you've got the beautiful young face and the old white guy that nobody's looking at. It's the same deal, it's the same deal here. No, I respectfully, very strongly disagree. I think that's absolutely incorrect. We have a statute here. It's ARS 13408 that sets forth when you can use any force at all to resist a property-only crime, and physical force is allowed.
Yep.
And I think we both agree appropriate. If somebody's trying to grab something out of my front yard, I can run out and grab it back. And the threat of lethal force, which in my opinion is even probably stupider than use of lethal force, but the threat of lethal force to stop a property crime is also legal in the state of Arizona. The use of lethal force to stop a property crime is absolutely not legal. Thank goodness. I'm glad it's not. And anybody that says otherwise simply hasn't read the statutes and the case law. That's all there is to it. Sorry to say that. Sorry to be stern and firm, but that's the answer.
And part of Arizona revised statutes 13-408. And again, criminal defense attorneys passed it, a member of the state bar of the state of Arizona, so does this for a living.
As of today.
Yeah,
you never know.
Right this moment.
Today, yeah.
But have been for years and years.
For 34 years.
Yeah. And an expert in criminal defense. This is what you do for a living here in the state of Arizona. Correct. So obviously contractually obligated and legally obligated to understand the law here and how it works here. For those of you who might be tuning into this who don't know me and don't know what I do, you can always look at my bio and the credentials in the link in the description, but I'm a court-admitted expert in use of force in self-defense and in firearms, right? I educate attorneys on how this stuff goes because most attorneys don't get a lot of education in self-defense. One 50-minute lecture in crim law is about it for most attorneys.
Yeah, right.
In law school, but so they are a mile wide and usually 6 or 8 inches deep in that whole mile, and I am an inch wide but a mile deep in this one issue. So here's the thing with 13-408 in Arizona is letter B in 13-408 says in no uncertain terms, it's very clear, the use of deadly force is reserved for the protection of life. That's it. Now, if you go to 13-411, which is the Arizona statute on the use of deadly force in the prevention of crime,
which we call it the vigilante statute.
The vigilante statute.
A great way to get into a whole lot of trouble. Yeah.
And there are a number of particular offenses it says you can stop with deadly force. All of those offenses are crimes against persons.
Yeah. They all pertain to the risk of death to a human being, or the risk of irreparable harm. Rape is in there. Rape. Yeah, exactly. So of course rape has a high risk of death as well, sadly. But yeah, and for instance, it's in ARS 411 says that you can use lethal force to stop a residential burglary in the first or second degree. Well, that's where somebody's breaking into your home. First degree means they're breaking your home while armed. Second degree means they're breaking into your home while they're not armed. But guess what most professional burglars do? They break into a house without a weapon. And if the alarm doesn't go off and nobody stops them at the door, then they walk into the kitchen and take one of those nice blades out of your Chicago cutlery block, and now they are armed once they're in.
Yep.
A high risk of death to a human being. So, and then we have armed robbery, which speaks for itself. Obviously, that's somebody taking your property, but doing so at weapon point to your person.
Yeah, threatening or using force makes it a robbery.
And then lastly, we have arson in the first degree. And a lot of people say, well, that means somebody's burning my garbage in my backyard, I can shoot. No, it's arson in the first degree, which means arson of an occupied
structure.
Right. And that means that they're about to burn people to death inside of a building. Well, clearly you can stop that, right? So these are not property-only crimes. They're crimes that maybe have something to do with property, but more importantly and only pointedly deal with the potential loss of human life.
Yes.
Those are the only exceptions.
Now,
and they're not, I would argue, they're not exceptions. So, yeah.
So when you say burglary in the first degree, burglary in the second degree, some people think, that's just a property crime. No, that's threat against people. Breaking into someone's car in the state of Arizona that is not occupied is burglary in the third degree. If you go and look at definitions, I can't tell you enough. When I see people, they'll look up a statute, because you can go to any state in the union now and look up the statutes.
Sure,
they're all online.
Sure.
However, what most people don't do is go look up definitions.
Or go to the ancillary statutes that are cited in the statute.
Yeah, the other statutes.
Correct.
And the other things they don't look up. They don't look up definitions, and they don't understand case law, because that's a whole, I'm not going to even open that can of worms, but it's so radically misunderstood by the general population.
If you're lucky, about 9 months into law school, you understand a little bit about that.
Oh, and you hate it. Yeah. You hate it vastly. Every lawyer I know goes, but also jury instructions. And how do juries actually get instructed to apply these laws? Those are critically important, and in many states not available online. You got to have like a LexisNexis or something along those lines in order to get those, which costs bunches of money.
Yeah, well, any law book that you get through the state bar or through the courts is ridiculous.
It costs crazy amounts of money. So I respectfully disagree, all right? And I told them that directly, so I'm not like, starting a beef. This is what I said directly. I wanted you guys, because I know that some viewers of Active Self-Protection Extra are also fans of the armed attorneys. I got no problems with Richard and Emily. I've had them on the channel, all right? That particular thing, if you live in Arizona, don't do this. Right. Don't do it. Now, the other states that they listed, I didn't look up their statutes. This tells me, however, I would be cautious in those states too, right? So listing one state and being wrong about it, I'd be careful in another. Texas, in very limited cases, Texas Penal Code 942 is very limited. And the limiting factor that I don't think most people think about there is the theft provision of the use of deadly force only applies to if the property cannot be recovered by any other means. And for you who drive, if you're driving a Duesenberg, okay? If you're driving a 27 Ducey that you bought from Jay Leno, because he's the one who owns it now, and that's your vehicle, and it's a one of one, and it is a one-off restoration that's worth $12 million.
Hundreds of dollars.
Hundreds of dollars. Okay. Then you go, hey, if they steal it, it's gone. I'll never see it again. It can never be replaced. It's an irreplaceable relic. Okay, but you're driving an F-150. It's the most popular car in America. I drive one. Dude.
How about this? I can make an argument that I'm a painter. I occasionally have a little easel, and I occasionally do a little bit of painting, and that painting cannot be reproduced. That was a one-of-a-kind painting that I painted. It was very special to me. My dad saw it before he died, and it's irreplaceable, rather. And so I guess I can kill somebody in Texas if they're stealing my painting. You're opening up a gigantic can of worms. And we talked about this several times, and you guys are familiar with the concept. We always talk about can versus must. Just because you can do something is not the issue here. If you're asking us to tell you whether you can or can't do something, you've completely missed the point of what this guy does every day and what I try to come on here and do once a week or so. And that is, we're not talking about what you can do. We're talking about what you can't possibly avoid having to do. You must do it, or you or someone you care about is going to die.
Right.
Period. And with all due respect to Jay's Duesenberg, it's a car.
It's a car.
It's a car. And I've not yet met the human life that was worth less than a car.
Well,
so,
and that Duesenberg is insured, friends.
well, it better be. I'm sure Jay has it insured.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I do get some people occasionally, well, that represents my hard work, it represents my time. Don't disagree with that, but it's still just property, okay? And it can be replaced. And not everybody has insurance. If you can't afford insurance, and I'm not
afford the ride.
I'm not trying to be flippant here, but the honest to God truth is, if you can't afford to insure your car, you cannot afford to take a trip into the criminal justice system. And I'm talking orders of magnitude more expensive.
Right.
And you might say, well, that's why I have firearms legal protection. I recommend that you have firearms legal protection, and I love them, and I have it too, right? Because I don't want to take that ride and pay all the financial risks of it. But FOP is not going to cover all the time you miss from work sitting in jail, waiting to get a bond hearing. They're not going to cover the repercussions of you maybe losing your job. I've done cases where clients have lost their job.
Lose 30% of your friends,
Right.
lose your job, lose your marriage. I've had 2 clients in my career. I'm really sorry to say that after we got them through the criminal system, and they both of them, I ended up getting all charges dropped, committed suicide.
Yeah, died by suicide. Terrible outcomes.
It's horrific.
So again, I don't do that. All right, don't use deadly force unless you have no other option that you or someone you love is going to die.
Correct.
All right, I always say, listen, I'm willing. If somebody threatens my wife's life, one of my children's lives, I will die or go to prison for the next 30 years to stop that and to protect them.
Without thinking.
Without even thinking about it. My life is worth it. My future is worth it for them to be alive and them to be around. I got no problem. And if you're in that actual place, you probably have no problems with the criminal justice system.
That's right.
The criminal justice system will probably go, we agree. Have a nice day. He needed killing. Okay. Other than that, you get yourself into a place where you're starting to ask, can I? And can I is a wrong question. It's just a wrong question.
We're supposed to bless you and give you a hunting license. It's just not going to work that way. Thank goodness.
I've also heard, I had a friend that said this, that he's no longer a practicing attorney. He got tired of the profession.
He won.
Yeah, well, he got the
got
heck out. And one of the big reasons he got out is he said, I got tired of people telling me, I don't hire a lawyer to tell me what to do. I hire a lawyer to tell me how I'm going to get away with what I've already decided to do. If that's you, here's my suggestion. Sell all your guns and don't ever use any force whatsoever, because you've already shown that you have terrible decision-making ability.
You're an idiot.
You're an idiot, and you're not who we need in the Second Amendment community. God bless you, everybody. Be smart.
Be safe. Thanks.